This morning we're starting a new sermon series in the last part of Genesis chapters 37 to 50, a series that I've entitled, God Meant It for Good. God Meant It for Good. It's a series that centers on the story, the life, the character of Joseph and his brothers. Twice in this story, the central conflict, the central issue in this long story is put this way. You meant it for evil, he says, but God meant it for good. We understand this story in those terms. You meant it for evil, God meant it for good. I consider, what might it mean for us if we could understand our story that way? What if we can understand our story that way? Here's what I already know about your story. There's been some trouble. There's been some conflict. There's been some disappointment. There's been some frustration. There's been some suffering. There's been some trouble. It hasn't always been smooth sailing. Sometimes it's tragic circumstances, out of anybody's control, it would seem. Sometimes it's mistreatment by other people. Sometimes it's our own mistakes and shortcomings. There's been trouble and pain and difficulty and suffering. All of us have faced some. Some of us have faced a lot. Some of us are facing it right now. But what if we could live with confidence, not hope, not wishful thinking, but really confidence that the things in our life that others may have intended for evil, God meant for good. This last week, our family was at Gull Lake Bible Conference, and the speaker said something a couple times that really struck me. He said something like this: everything God is doing in your life is motivated by love. He can only bless you. He didn't mean by that everything is going to go exactly the way you or I want it to go. He didn't mean by that everything will feel good. What he meant was, everything God does is done out of love, ultimately for our good. I know that's technically true. If you spend any time around God's Word, you know it's technically true, but you also know that it often doesn't feel quite right. It feels overstated. It feels like big parts of our life are not good. They're problems and troubles to be gotten away from. But what if we could know? What if we know with real confidence that the hard things that happen to us in life, the pains, the struggles, the frustrations, the sufferings, even if other people meant them for evil, God really means them for good. That behind whatever motivations may drive the way people have treated us or that drive the way circumstances have unfolded, that underneath and in all of that, God is working them out for our actual good and our actual joy. Hey, that's my big goal for this series, that we'd get a new perspective on our struggles and our sufferings. And we'll only get that perspective if we catch clear sight of a big and powerful and good God. Suzanne's going to come up and read for us in just a second here. Suzanne, you come up. The first chapter in this story, Genesis 37. If you have a Bible or device, let me encourage you to turn to Genesis 37. Here's what we're going to see this morning. That often our struggles start and perhaps even linger in the one place we think they shouldn't, in our own families. And we're going to find that God finds us and sustains us even there. Suzanne, would you read for us?
Genesis 37. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him, and they could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept this saying in mind. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, Here I am. So he said to him, Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, What are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock? And the man said, They have gone away, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, Let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, Shed no blood, cast him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors that he wore, and they took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers listened to him. Then Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, The boy is gone, and I, where shall I go? Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood, and they set the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, This we have found. Please identify it, whether it is your son's robe or not. And he identified it and said, It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard.
Let's pray as we start. Father, if it's true that in Christ alone our hope is found, then we need this morning a renewed vision of Christ. We need to see him clearly, not to bank on some vision of him we had when we were young, not to rest on the sight of him we had perhaps when we first came to trust him, but a fresh vision of the glory and the beauty and the excellency of Christ. Our hope is found in him. Father, I pray we'd see him clearly this morning. And if we're going to do that, we need your word. So I pray that your word would point us to Christ, would exalt him, that we would rest in him and delight in him and find our hope in him. Father, I pray as we look at your word, that your Spirit would speak to us, that we would see something of our story in this story, and that it would cause us to believe your word and rest on your promises and put our hope and our trust in you. I pray that you'd grant that to us this morning. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we are, as Suzanne read a few minutes ago, we are in Genesis chapter 37, so I encourage you to look there again. Genesis 37, verse 1 begins this way. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. These are the generations of Jacob. This is a story, really all of Genesis from chapter 37 through the end of the book in chapter 50 is a story, a short story, a novella, some have called it. It's a story about a family. It's a story about a family. I love to meet people and hear their story, and one of the things I'm always most interested in hearing is the story of their family. Family is a powerful thing. You can't tell the story of your life without talking about your family. If I met you and asked you about your story, you'd start with, well, my parents were so-and-so and so-and-so, and we were born and lived here, and we grew up, and you can't tell your story without talking about your family, and it impacts and shapes your story in profound ways. That's one of the reasons I think people are so interested in genealogy. We want to see where we've come from, who our family is, and we're curious, how might that impact me and my story going forward? Your family of origin has a powerful influence on your values, your ideas, your beliefs, the way you look at life, the way you look at the world. There can be no doubt that family has a powerful impact on your story. But family is not just a powerful thing. It's also a precious thing. Maybe because it's been such a joy for us in life. Or maybe for some of us because we've always longed for it to be that. Maybe you've seen some of those videos where a child finds out that they've been adopted. And this video will catch their face and their expression, the excitement and enthusiasm. And you watch that video and you get all teary-eyed just watching it. And you think, why? I don't even know these people. Why? Why is it so moving? It's because deep down we recognize a child ought to have parents. A child ought to have a home. A child ought to have a family. Or those videos you'll see of dad comes home from being deployed overseas and surprises his kid at the basketball game or the school party or whatever it may be. And they're always so moving and powerful. We recognize that families ought to be together. Family is a powerful thing and it's a precious thing. And precisely because it's so powerful and precious, it also carries great potential to be a painful thing. Every family is made up of sinners, and therefore every family struggles. Every family. Sometimes it looks like the experience of a family that just never quite lives up to our expectations. It's just never quite what we hope it to be. I meet people all the time whose experience of family never quite has lived up to what they want it to be. And they deal with a kind of lingering disappointment about family. And then sometimes I meet people whose family looks like abuse or mistreatment or neglect. And they're dealing with something much more profound than disappointment. It's something more like PTSD, and it impacts them for the rest of their life. You know, your family has a powerful impact on your story. But as we'll see clearly over the next several weeks, looking at Joseph's family and his story, although family has a powerful impact on our story, somebody else is actually writing it. Family has a powerful impact on our story, but family's not writing our story. Somebody else is. You know, the story that we'll be looking at for the next 9 weeks or so is about a remarkably dysfunctional family, but also a remarkably important family. This family of Jacob, Joseph and his 11 brothers, are remarkably important. That family started with Abraham. And Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac had a son, Jacob, who we'll encounter in this story. Jacob has 12 sons that we'll see all over this section. It's fair to say that the entire book of Genesis has been about this family. In fact, we could say more. We could say that the entire Pentateuch, the books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the entire Pentateuch is about this family. In fact, the entire Old Testament is about this family. Actually, we could go one step further. The truth is, this family is what the whole Bible is about. in ways that become remarkably transformed when we get to the New Testament. So we actually need to understand this family and this story. But this remarkably important family, as I said, is remarkably dysfunctional. Abraham, the patriarch of the family, couldn't have children, apparently. Got old well into his 80s, so his wife, Sarah, said, "Why don't you have a baby with my servant, and then we'll just call that baby ours." So they do that, but then, of course, as soon as that baby's born, Sarah's jealous of her servant and hates the child, and they end up kicking the servant and the child out into the wilderness. It's a big mess. Finally, he has a son, Isaac, the son of promise, and everything's great with Isaac, but then Isaac gets married and has twin sons himself, and he loves the one son, but his wife loves the other son, and there's clear favoritism and games being played and deception and dishonesty. It's a big mess. And so as we start in here in Genesis 37 on the family of Jacob, we'd like to think Jacob's probably learned. Jacob's looked at his parents and his grandparents and learned all the important lessons. That's what you've done, right? You've looked at your parents and your grandparents and you've learned all the important lessons. You know now, right? That's not what happens. Jacob hasn't learned the lessons. There in Genesis 37, starting in verse 2, my Bible can't stay open to anything in the wind. He says, Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. Jacob hasn't learned the lesson at all. Jacob has 4 wives and kids with all of those wives. His family is full of conflict. He hasn't learned anything, and now he picks one son, Joseph, to be his favorite. Several years ago, I may have told you the story before, several years ago, I was putting our girls to bed. Aubrey and Evie at the time shared a bedroom, and I wanted them to hear how extra special they are to me. And so Evie was laying on one side of the bed, Aubrey sleeps on the other side of the bed, and I climbed into bed next to Evie, and I gave her a hug and a kiss, and I said to Evie, loud enough for Aubrey to hear, I said, "Hey, listen, don't tell the other kids, but you're my favorite." I don't know if that's good parenting or not. I just wanted to hear it, right? But I didn't want to be deceptive. I wanted Aubrey to hear it too. So I said that, and as I looked over at Aubrey, she looks over at me, rolls her eyes, and looks the other way, right? And Evie gets a big smile on her face, and I give her a hug and a kiss, and we talk about how special she is, and I get done with Evie, and I get up and I walk around to the other side of the bed, and I lay down next to Aubrey, and I give her a hug and a kiss, and I say, "Hey, listen, don't tell the other kids, but you're my favorite." And from the other side of the bed I hear, "Hey, you said I was your favorite." I didn't really want to play favorites. I just wanted him to hear him say how extra special they were to me. But Jacob is playing favorites. He's not even trying to hide it. He's got 12 sons, and number 11, Joseph, is the oldest son of Jacob's favorite wife. So this is already a crazy family structure. The oldest son of his favorite wife, and Joseph is his favorite, and everybody knows. And just in case they wondered, he makes or buys or procures somehow a special coat. We used to always call it a coat of many colors. Maybe that's what it is. There's other possible ways to interpret the word behind that. It might be a richly ornamented coat. It might be a very long coat with long sleeves and going all the way down to his ankles. We don't know what the coat was exactly, but what we do know is the coat was designed to set Joseph apart. It was designed to tell anyone who would see, including the 11 other brothers, this is the special brother. This is the brother I care about the most. Probably it indicated, hey, this is the brother I want to be in charge. This is the one who's going to carry on for me. Jacob doesn't even try to hide his favoritism. I don't know if it made Joseph feel special or not. I do know that it made his brothers absolutely hate him. Absolutely hate him. Now listen, the main point of Genesis 37 is not to give us some lessons on good parenting, but you have to see that this is terrible parenting. It's terrible parenting. Jacob is setting up all his kids for trouble. favoritism, preferential treatment is a massive mistake. You might say, well, this is just a kid that's most like me. Or she's the one that just doesn't give me any trouble. Or this one is just the most fun to be around. But what that teaches the child is you really have to get your act together, be on the top of your game to earn your parents' favor, if you even can. And you know what that becomes ultimately? Kids who grow up thinking, I really have to get my act together to earn God's favor, if I even can. And rather than bringing our children to the gospel, we drag them back to the shackles and burdens of the law that neither we nor our fathers could bear. Look, God is writing our children's story just as He is writing ours. He will bring their story to the end and the purpose that He desires it to have. But along the way, He's given us the privilege and the responsibility to craft, especially the early chapters of their story. And we need to write into that story truth, grace, beauty, unconditional acceptance, and love. Here's what happens, though, if we're not careful and we're not intentional. You'll write the early chapters of your child's story the same way your parents wrote yours. You may not mean to. In fact, you may have said at some point in the past, I will not do it the way my parents did it. But if you're not careful and intentional, you'll write it the same way they did. And your children will deal with the same things you dealt with. That's exactly what Jacob does here. He has grown up in dysfunction. His parents, his grandparents, it's been a mess, and he brings it right on into the next generation. He's a third generation full of conflict. He doesn't learn. He perpetuates the problem even further with his 12 sons. In fact, this story, Genesis itself, is written for Jacob's family about 400 years later. They've grown from 12 brothers to 12 tribes. The family's still divided into groups after each of these brothers. And they've been, for years, we'll see, for years in Egypt as slaves, and now they've been brought out by God's power and grace, and they're preparing to enter the promised land, and there's still conflict, there's still division, there's still trouble. This story in many ways is written to point them to say, hey, this is where we came from. This is how it started. Look at the trouble we had. Let's not go into the land like this. Let's not go into the land doing what they did. Let's go together as a nation, as a family. The legacy of this family is conflict and struggle. But remarkably, it's also the legacy of a God who is faithful, who continues to work His good purposes in them for His glory and for their good. And starting in verse 5, we get our first hint that God is at work in the story. Joseph has a dream. Actually, he has two dreams. In the first dream, they're out working in the field, cutting down some kind of grain, and they're bundling up these sheaves, and all of a sudden, Joseph's sheaf stands up tall, and all his brothers' sheaves bow down to him. And Joseph feels the need to share this dream with the rest of his family. Hey, look, your sheaves are bowing down to mine. And they hate him even more. They see the implication. They see what's being suggested. Then he has another dream. He says, hey, another dream. The sun and the moon and 11 stars all bow down to me. And now his father Jacob takes umbrage and says, well, are you saying that your mother and I and all your brothers are going to bow down to you? These dreams infuriate his brothers. Maybe it's the way he tells them, or the fact that he feels the need to tell them it all. In a culture that values birth order, in which the firstborn gets high priority and precedence, son number 11 says, looks like I'm going to be in charge. But it's clear that there's more going on in these dreams than the bragging of a young man. The brothers just can't let the dreams go. In the next section, as Suzanne read earlier, they're going to call him that dreamer. And they propose we should kill him, and then we'll see what happens to his dreams. These dreams linger and stick with them and irk them and make them angry. We'll see what will become of his dreams, they say. But the truth is, what will become of Joseph's dreams is exactly what all of these chapters in the story will be about. You know, you and I wouldn't put much stock in these dreams. We don't put much stock in dreams, but in this day and age, they often did. My younger brother has a lot of crazy dreams, always has, and I remember as a kid we would talk about our dreams sometimes, and his always seemed to be the craziest. I remember one time he told us that he had a dream, and it was really something, and we said, "What was it?" He said, "I had a dream that Dad died on the cross." And so we laughed, and we thought it was funny. None of us stopped and went, what could that mean? How might that play out? We just said, "That's crazy, man, you're a weirdo," and didn't think about it again. But these dreams, they can't seem to blow it off and say, it's just a dream. They don't think it's going to happen, maybe. They don't want it to happen. But they can't help but wonder. Dreams play a big part in Joseph's story. In a couple chapters, we'll see he's in prison in Egypt, and the cupbearer and the baker for Pharaoh are in prison. They have dreams, and we got to know what this means. Joseph says, "I'll tell you," and he does. In the next chapter, Pharaoh himself has a dream. He's like, "I got to know what this means," and Joseph says, "God can tell you." What's the dream? God's communicating through these dreams. And we get this sense here that God is communicating something as well. These aren't the crazy dreams of, his deep psyche coming out. There's a message here. We get that sense in verse 11 as Jacob rebukes him for him, and his brothers are jealous. But Jacob keeps the matter in mind. There's something going on here. God is doing something. For the next several chapters, we'll see Joseph endure incredible hardships and mistreatment and suffering. But as we will clearly see, God's the one writing his story. Some of the chapters in Joseph's story are hard. They are really hard, and it's his own family where his troubles begin. But God's purposes for him will be accomplished and realized. That's the only way to explain the rest of the story in chapter 37. It's a familiar story to you, but maybe we don't see how unlikely so much of it is. It's amazing that Jacob sends Joseph to find his brothers. He must see, mustn't he, how much Joseph's brothers hate him? Doesn't Jacob see that? He must. And yet he sends him far away from himself to go find them. Away from Jacob's protection, away from Jacob's watching eye. Joseph gets there, and he can't find them. He is, it says, wandering around in a field. And then a man shows up. We don't even know from where. A man shows up and says, "What are you looking for?" He says, "I'm looking for my brothers." And the guy says, "Oh, I happen to hear them say that they're going on to Dothan." What are the odds that Joseph runs into that man, the one man who can tell them where his brothers have gone? And then the story turns ugly. We're not surprised, knowing what we do. His brothers hate him. But this is an encounter God wants Joseph to have. This is the story God is writing for him. Joseph's own brothers decide in some kind of frenzy they're just going to kill him. And their motivation is very straightforward. We'll see what becomes of his dreams, right? They want to write Joseph's story too. But Reuben, the oldest brother, stops them. He says, "Well, let's just throw him in this pit. His plan is to come back later and I'll rescue him." Reuben's not in Jacob's good graces because back in chapter 35 he slept with one of his father's wives. And so he's in a bad way. So maybe he's trying to make up for some of that here. I'll rescue the favorite son. But apparently Reuben steps away for a while, and Judah, brother number 4, has an idea. "Hey, how about this? Let's not kill him. He is our brother after all. Why don't we just sell him into slavery?" Bring some brotherly affection to the discussion. Let's just sell him into slavery. We don't want to kill him. And then we'll try to stage his death. So they do. They pull him out of the pit. They sell him to a passing band of Ishmaelites or Midianites, and they carry him off. And just like that, Joseph is gone. Out of the land of promise, away from his family. Humanly speaking, there's no reason to ever expect to hear from Joseph again. His life is going to stink. He's being sold as a slave. No rights, no privileges, no legacy, no reason to expect anything but a difficult, miserable existence. He's out of the story. Except he's not. See, the brothers will go back. They'll concoct this ruse with a bloody coat to deceive their father Jacob. Something must have happened. What do you think happened, Dad? A wild animal must have killed him. That's kind of what it looks like. And Jacob's heart is broken, believing his favorite son is dead. Verse 35 tells us, all of Jacob's sons and daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. They say, in effect, Dad, you still have all of us. And Jacob says, who cares? That's it. It's the end of the story. I'll never be happy again. All I have is you. But look at verse 36. The chapter ends. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him, Joseph, in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. This story isn't over. Not by a long shot. It's already an ugly story. But it's far from done. Here's what we're starting to see here. Some of the most profound disappointment and frustration and pain that we can endure can sometimes come from the one place we feel it shouldn't. Even our own family. Now, Joseph's going to encounter lots of other trouble from lots of other sources. But he encounters it first at home. Don't lose sight of this, though. Your family impacts your story, but what will become clear as we work through the rest of Genesis is that someone else is actually writing it. Your family impacts your story in profound and remarkable ways, but somebody else is writing your story. And what we need to see, to know with confidence, is however bad that story may get, however bad it may seem, no matter how difficult or dark the chapters you're in right now may feel, we need to know for certain that God is working it all out for good, that he's accomplishing his good purpose in our story. We're going to explore this in detail over the next 8 weeks, but let me point you to the foundation of this assurance as we close this morning. Turn to one more passage, Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8. We will tease out some of the implications of this as we go, but I want to see it as we close this morning. Romans 8. Romans 8, verse 28 says this. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who didn't spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? Paul says, look, your story, God's story for your life started way before you. Way before the world was even created, his story for your life began. And if we go on to read in Romans 8, and we will in the next couple weeks, we'll see that all sorts of things may confront us. All sorts of struggles, difficulties, trials, and suffering. Some of them coming from the people that are closest to us. Some of them coming from the families into which we were born and live. Some of the relationships for which we have the highest hopes. But the foundation for our certainty that God is writing our story for our good is the fact that God has sent his own Son to die on our behalf. Paul says, God, if God hasn't spared his own Son for you, how will he not freely give us all things? How can we not be absolutely confident that God is writing our story, even though it has chapters and turns we wouldn't pick? It has situations we would never have chosen, that he is writing it ultimately for our good. And when we wonder, and when we struggle, and when we lose hope, what we look back to again and again is the Son of God on the cross for us. The surety, the certainty, the guarantee that God is writing our story and will accomplish it for our good. Listen, your family has a powerful impact on your story, but somebody else is writing it. And if you are in Christ by faith, the end of your story is remarkably good. If you could see what the author of your story could see, you'd write it the way he's writing it too. And so it calls for us to have incredible faith that God is good, that he is sovereign and powerful, that he's working all of these things out for his glory and our good. Let's pray. Father, this morning, I pray that you'd give us that faith, that certainty. Many of us have gone through difficult and dark chapters in our lives. Some of us perhaps going through those right now. And we need the confidence and certainty that in all of that, you are doing what is right and what is good. Father, we don't feel it. And we want to feel it. We want to feel it deep. We want things to feel good and feel right and feel happy and joyful. And sometimes they feel confusing and discouraging, maybe even hopeless. So, Father, above and beyond and over our feelings, give us faith. Trust in your character. Trust in your plan. Help us to look to Christ, the surety and the certainty that you are doing good and mean good for us. Father, I pray each one of us would have a renewed and earnest trust in the work of Christ on our behalf, his death on the cross, his resurrection to eternal life. Father, I pray that we would trust deeply in him and our eyes would never go far from your love for us expressed to us in him. Father, I pray Springview Community Church would be a people deeply committed to that story, that we would find our story in your story, and that we would know all the joy that comes from that. Father, I pray this week that you would give us great encouragement and great hope. Help us to look to you in faith. Sustain us, protect us, guide us, give us wisdom, give us courage. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, thank you for coming this morning. It's been good to be here together. I'm thankful for the beautiful weather once again, and I trust that you will have a great week. Let me send you out with these words of benediction. 2 Corinthians 13. The grace of the Lord Jesus Christ and love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen. God bless you. Have a great week.